going less on this one. A lot of it has to do with the ability of Jaden Daniels to create plays and move in the pocket with his legs. I think going into this game is going to be paramount for the Commanders to get the ball out of his hands quick and for him to make those fast decisions. I know the Eagles line has been unbelievable rushing the passer, but I'm going less.
All right, and then Dan, I like this game. Let's just stay there. All right. 99.5 rushing yards is the total for Saquon against Washington. You go more or less?
More. And can I borrow some money to put even more on it?
Okay.
I mean, it's Saquon Barkley. He's in the conversation to break Eric Dickerson's rushing record for the single season. Of course, that is going to be something that Philadelphia can go after. Also, I think that Washington's defense is really good in some areas. Run defense, it's not their specialty. I say over or more and easily.
He had over 140 yards rushing the first time these teams met. Speaking of chasing that record, Saquon was asked about it yesterday. Here's what he said.
I'm fully aware of how far I am. I'm not scared of it. If I don't get it, I'm not going to be depressed. If I get it, I'm not going to be that crazy happy either. It's a record. Record's meant to be broken. But my mindset's focused on winning games and competing for a championship, and that's the only thing that really matters.
What I love about Saquon Barkley, among the many things, is that he always says the right thing, but there's no way in the world he means that, Dan Orlovsky, right? There's no way in the world he means that.
There's every way in the world that he absolutely means that. He wants to win a Super Bowl. Here's the reality. When your team goal is still like on the table, you don't really care about the individual stuff. The individual stuff becomes the forefront of your mind when your team's out of it. And you're just trying to go accomplish that career thing. You go ask guys like Jason Kelce and Nick Foles what it's like and Fletcher Cox to win the Super Bowl in Philadelphia. Do you think that people care about one record or the team thing, we did it as a city type of thing? Saquon, I'm sure it's a thought, but he could care less. He wants to win the Super Bowl.
Someone get me a thesaurus so I can find new words that I can use to describe how strongly I disagree with that thought. I turn to Harry and J-Mac over here. I'm not suggesting that he would rather break the record than win the Super Bowl, but that's not a binary proposition. This is a record that has stood for 40 years. It is the stuff of legend. It is held by Eric Dickerson. Prior to that, it was held by people like O.J. Simpson and Jim Brown. It has survived the entire careers of Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and all these other great running backs who chased it, Adrian Peterson, and never got it. If you're telling me that you don't think Saquon Barkley, and I'll add to this that their last game of the season is against the Giants, so he could sign the game ball and give it to Joe Shane, who decided they didn't need to keep him anymore. But that's not even the point. I cannot believe for 1 second that breaking this record wouldn't mean the world to not just Saquon Barkley, but every member of that offensive line, too.
Absolutely. Two things can both be true. Like, you can be chasing the Super Bowl, and that can be the most important thing. But part of them chasing and getting to the Super Bowl is going to be on the back of Saquon Barkley. So, yes, breaking that record helps us win the Super Bowl. I very much believe that he knows the record, knows exactly where he stands, what he needs, and it is important to him.
And they all know it.
The offensive line as well.
And they are going to give him the ball and 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 give him the ball these last 3 games to go after that record.
If he plays in that game.
He's going to play in the game to break the record. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
The number 1 seed is on the line. So
Exactly.
It's not if he plays in that ball game.
Exactly.
When you have 3 teams that are contending for a number 1 seed right now in the NFC, with Detroit, Minnesota, and the Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley's going to be playing in that last game.
Because they're all alive, they're going to have to play their full schedule. If the race for the number 1 seed were over, if there was nothing at stake for the Eagles, I believe they call off the dogs, even with the rushing record.
Okay, let's because that is a scenario that could happen. If the Lions and Vikings win their next 2 games,
they'll play for the 1 seed.
Then they'll play for the 1 seed, and the Eagles would not have a chance. There are some distant tiebreakers that could flip, but it's very unlikely. So the likelihood is that last game of the season for the Eagles could be meaningless for their seeding against the Giants. And Saquon, I'm making this up, is 150 yards away from the record. You're telling me he's going to sit that game?
Yeah.
I think that they would not force the issue. I think he might get some work to start the game. They would see how it goes, but I don't think that they would intentionally pursue that record with nothing. I don't.
Yeah, no, that's true. You're not going to, because if you play Saquon to get the record, you have to play all 5 offensive line. You have to play the entire offense. If you don't believe that's in the best interest of the team going into
by the way, and if they don't have a bye the next week, if they don't have a bye,
and
they wouldn't have a bye in that scenario, then you're not going to go stick him out there for 26 carries and put him at risk with a playoff game the next week. You're not
correct.
I don't think you're doing that.
And I'm not even putting out in the universe, but could you imagine if they did that?
And he got hurt. No, I understand what you're saying. No one wants to say it out loud.
You mean, like, could you imagine if Patrick Mahomes goes out there and
plays this weekend? I mean, that's the
but
thing.
He hasn't clinched anything. He hasn't clinched anything. Mahomes hasn't.
Absolutely.
Listen.
That same imagine, huh?
I don't know anything about anything, but I know this. That is a hallowed record.
Totally.
Right? That's one of the big records in all of sports. It's one of the few football numbers people know. Like, ask yourself, what's the record for most passing yards in a season? Who holds it? Most people don't know that, but they know 2105, Eric Dickerson, because it has been chased by Barry Sanders, and it has been chased recently by Derrick Henry and Adrian Peterson. People can practically name all the 2,000-yard seasons
16 games
in
too, right?
It was in 16 games. So then we could have the whole debate about whether the 17th game is a factor, the whole Roger Maris thing coming all back over again. To me, I think we are underplaying how important that record will be to the people involved.
I think we're underplaying the human character of Saquon Barkley. I forget what game it was.
It was against the Giants when he could have
that record.
When he could have had his own personal record.
The
Yeah.
young guy get the reps.
So the same person we think is going to then maybe, if it comes to it, and chase that overall record and potentially risk something in the future when it comes to the playoffs?
To be clear, I'm not trying to diminish his character in any way.
No, I know you're
I
not.
love
I know you're
Saquon
not.
Barkley.
More than points on the
Everybody
record.
loves Saquon Barkley. I think he wants the record. I think it matters to all those offensive linemen in that room. It's not an
I think your
individual.
point is the valid one. Both can be true.
Yes.
Yes, no, of course he wants to win the Super Bowl. If you said, hey, Saquon, would you rather break the record and win the Super Bowl? Of course he'd rather win the Super Bowl. But it isn't a binary proposition. You can try and do both, and I will be shocked if he's reasonably close. I mean, if he's 247 yards away, that's different. Actually starts tonight. I'm looking for bold opening statements. J-Mac, give me an opening statement for tonight's game in L.A.
Justin Herbert, show us that you are the guy going against this Broncos defense that is coming at you, and they're going to be in attack mode. In that first matchup, we saw Herbert being able to move around and be mobile. Ankle injuries dealing with now. Can he do some of those same things? Get the ball out, get it over the middle to Lad McConkey and make plays. Show us you're the guy, Justin Herbert.
Harry, Eagles, Commanders, give me an opening statement.
Yeah, the offensive line of the Commanders, you need to make up for what you weren't able to do last week versus the New Orleans Saints. You allowed 8 sacks, and that's with a very athletic quarterback in Jaden Daniels. I know right now, if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, if I'm Jalen Carter and the rest of the guys on that defensive line, I'm foaming at the mouth. I want some of that action, boss.
Meanwhile, back to Saturday, we got Steelers-Ravens, critical matchup. Dan, give me an opening statement.
Lamar, go get it done. You got to go get this game won, and you got to play really well. I want to see you be the Lamar Jackson, who's the 2-time MVP in this league, who's contending for a third one. Don't become something and somebody that you're not. The Steelers defense, they don't fear you. Show them that they're wrong in doing that by just going to play your game instead of trying to fit yourself into this box versus this opponent.
The game means absolutely everything. If the Steelers win, they clinch the AFC North. If they don't, then it is essentially a 50-50 proposition for the two teams for the division as the season goes on. We had a really good tape that we ran here that originated with Teddy Bruschi on Sunday NFL Countdown that showed why the Steeler defense has given Lamar so much trouble. It was originally a countdown tape, but about keeping him compressed and keeping him in the pocket. So what is it he needs to do? Let's be specific. So for the fans getting ready to watch that game, what do you want to see from Lamar on Saturday?
Screw your compression. Go. Take off. Be an athlete. Make them fear your speed when it comes to the open field. Don't get stuck on stuff and think that you have to be this quarterback in a certain way. So often he gets stuck against Pittsburgh where he says, no, I'm going to make this throw. Instead of taking a check down right in front of you that I've seen you do countless times over your career and not trying to force the football, you try to throw it downfield because you're going to show them just how great you are. Or you have a seam route up top, and I've seen you see, well, that safety shading to the top of the screen tells me to get to that backside seam. And instead of throwing it, you're like, no, I'm going to fit it into this small window because you don't think that I'm a good enough passer because you're in your own head. Or when you want to see that seam at the top of the screen in the corner playing over the top, just take the check down. Either throw the ball to the back underneath or go take off with your legs and make everybody on that defense chase after you because you're the best athlete on the field. I want to see Lamar, if the seam opens up, go back to the AFC Championship game last year as well. Go be you. Go be the scariest person on the planet when the ball's in your hands.
Dan, I have a question. Last week, Jalen Hurts had his way with the Steelers defense.
Yes.
Is there anything that Baltimore can take from that to apply to their game plan against the Steelers?
Oh, absolutely, because Baltimore's pass game is so advanced this year, one, because Lamar's spectacular. Yep. But Zay Flowers, and their name we don't talk about enough, is Rashad Bateman. And Pittsburgh wants to play single high safety, meaning one safety in the middle field, essentially one-on-one matchups on the outside. And Philly said, we're too good. And I think that because of those two receivers, that throw by Lamar is freaking ridiculous, by the way. I think those two receivers there can be a very similar mindset.
See, so for you guys, your expertise is the X's and O's. Mine is sort of the historical perspective on things. Lamar Jackson is 27 years old. He's won 2 MVPs. He has been one of the most dynamic and spectacular players in the history of the NFL. He cannot be placed into historical perspective until he wins a championship. So that's what, to me, can they win 3 straight road games? And I guess it's not impossible. But boy, that would be the road less traveled, right? If they lose this weekend, then they're guaranteed to be a wild card. So what Lamar Jackson needs to solidify himself, instead of being, oh, he's a great player, we can start talking about him among the great quarterbacks ever. Like, where does he start slotting into this with his 2 MVPs and everything if he wins a championship? And I don't want to say that's at stake on Saturday, but it is a huge step toward.
It's a huge step because we look at the first game with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the offense came up short. The Pittsburgh Steelers didn't score a touchdown. The defense forced all field goals in that game, and they still lost. So you're looking at this one for Lamar. Dan said it in the first hour. He called it a must-win, and you want to see him go out there and perform. And to your point, to Teddy's point, how they clog the middle, keep him in the pocket. I think as much as it is Lamar taking off, it's getting the ball on the outside in the guy like Zay Flowers' hands right away and letting him do his thing. Rashad Bateman, making those good decisions to stay ahead of the sticks, what you said, Harry, to be able to go out there and play free when you're doing those things.
For me, it's be obsessed with taking what the defense gives to you, right? Be ahead of the chains. First and second down production is imperative. You look in that first matchup, 7 of the 11 third downs was 3rd and 9 or more. You're playing to the strengths of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Now they get to pin their ears back and rush the passer and be disruptive. Also, there are few plays. When there are plays there to be made downfield, you have to be able to hit those. Now, whether that's Lamar's fault or the skill position players or the supporting cast, they have to hit on the plays that are there to be made.
You know what just occurred to me, Dan? And this is something we had not planned for, so the Artie Dolan, our producer, is going to be mad at me, but it just jumped into my head. We have been sitting here talking for 7 minutes about this game and the importance of it. We have not yet said the words Derrick or Henry, not one time. And all the conversation was about how they went out and they got Derrick Henry so they wouldn't be this dependent on Lamar being Superman in a playoff scenario and all that kind of stuff. Where does he fit into all of this?
The game will be won by Baltimore if Lamar plays his best game.
Absolutely.
This is
not a Derrick Henry game.
Correct. This is the X's and O's of it. Pittsburgh is going to put an extra person down to the football, and they're going to say, you're not going to run the ball on us. We're not going to allow you to be two-dimensional. We want you to be one-dimensional. I honestly believe, in my gut, Mike Tomlin wants the ball in Lamar Jackson's hands. He wants him to feel that pressure. He wants him to kind of play to the style that they force Lamar to play. And I don't think that Mike Tomlin, again, I don't want to he 100% respects him, but he thinks he's got his number. He thinks there's a certain style of play, to Teddy's tape, that compression of the pocket, that he can control the game. He does not want to play with 2 safeties deep and say, Baltimore, run the football on us. The last thing I'd say about this game, because Hempo sent it to him, 4-game losing streak for Lamar. Off those turnovers, it's 35-0. Pittsburgh's outscored them.
Talk about having his number. I mean, this is Lamar Jackson against the Steelers. And, of course, it's Mike Tomlin has been the coach through all of this. 1-4, 8 picks, 5 touchdowns. Now, yes, Harry.
That 0 rush touchdown and 5 starts.
It's stunning.
That's alarming.
Yeah.
That's the thing that caught my eye the most, because that also shows you that Pittsburgh, from the defensive perspective, have very athletic guys on that side of the ball.
Schefty,
dominant players.
It's a very good point, and I'm glad that you made it. Schefty, injuries are a huge factor here, though. The Steelers have question marks on 2 of their most important players.
George Pickens and T.J. Watt. We'll start with George Pickens, who had 8 catches for 95 yards the last time, or 89 yards the last time these 2 teams met. George Pickens has not practiced this week, has that hamstring injury. This is clearly a multiple-week hamstring injury. It turned out to be worse than the team thought, and the fact that he hasn't practiced this week is an indication that I would expect that he'll be ruled out probably later today or tomorrow whenever they release their injury report. As for TJ Watt, he's dealing with the sprained ankle that he suffered on Sunday, coming around the edge against the Eagles, came up lame, went through testing. The good part is it's nothing more severe than an ankle sprain. The bad part is it's the type of injury that sidelines most every player a couple of weeks. Now, TJ Watt already is limited at practice, back at practice, and it sounds like he's going to push to play. But is he going to be 100% of TJ Watt? And I think the answer to that is no. But is 70% of TJ Watt as good as what you would get? Better than you would have without him? So I think he'll try to be out there. I just don't know how effective he'll be out there.
The Steelers are in this gauntlet that we talked about, right? They played the Eagles, then the short turnaround here, and they play the Ravens, and then the even shorter turnaround, and they play Kansas City. We've been talking all about Mahomes. That's who they play on Christmas Day. So we put the picks up here. I'm the only one on Pittsburgh. Yeah. And in all honesty, I did it because I'm the only one on Pittsburgh. And I don't just mean amongst the other names on this screen. Everyone is telling me, oh, the Steelers have no chance. Oh, no, George Pickens. My experience is that when everyone says something is going to happen, it almost never does.